wonderful world. Welcome to another episode of Healing in Ways You Never Thought Possible with your host, myself, Dr. Dolores Fazzino. We are continuing on in our Miraculous Healing series, and today we have a real amazing guest. His name is Endre Hoffman, and he talks about self worth. In fact, he is the self worth doctor. How often in our lives have we had situations where our self-worth was tested? Maybe we were born into families where we were told we were not good enough, or society has said, labeled us that we aren't good enough because of X, Y, and Z. So let me share a little bit about our lovely guest today. And he comes from all over the world, basically. He was in New Zealand and Australia, and now he's over in Europe with his family, doing the nomadic thing, which I think is amazing. But let me just share something about him. He says the journey of being trapped by self-doubt to a new life of potential and freedom by releasing your genius. He is the person who has lived the experience and has moved beyond that, so he could help other people move beyond that and move beyond surviving to thriving. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Endre Hoffman, the doctor of self-worth. Hello,
Dolores,
Endre. How are you?
how are you? Good to be here.
Good to
So
be here
happy.
too. Good. So, you know, self-worth is such a big issue for a lot of people. And I know you and I've chatted before, and your background is so interesting. Could you just share that with our audience, and just how your background has helped you to get to where you're at today?
I have 34 years story, 34 years of struggle through being a little version of me. It started with trauma with my dad. I felt ignored, not connected well. He was himself full of anxiety and fears. And somehow early on in life, I must have decided that I'm not worthy of his love, not worthy of his attention. And unfortunately, my life started to spiral every area of life, showing this the reflection of this lack of respect to myself, lack of self-worth, lack of confidence. I couldn't even speak from the people. So unfortunately, when it came to, starting to try and impress my dad, I became a high achiever. So I will gain his love and attention. It never worked. I went to the extreme. I was running marathons, climbing ice, pretty crazy things, and never raised an eyebrow. So obviously, I was trying to connect to someone who wasn't ready. I didn't know this. And for the next 15 or 20 years, I was still away from my father. I was still trying to prove myself. So that was the biggest trap in my life, trying to prove that I'm good enough. And of course, I was attracting all of these situations where I felt not good enough, so I had to prove myself. So I was wrong footed. Even when it came to finding a job, I thought, where do they pay the most? I have no idea who I am or what I want. I ended up working in banking. I left. And then from that point, I was looking for answers for the next pretty much 20, 25 years. Traveling 65 countries, looking for spiritual gurus to tell me what's wrong with me. I moved to Ireland first, then I lived in New Zealand for another 7 years, working in a corporate environment, and same patterns were slapping me in the face. Uh, how far do you want me to go in, Dolores?
Oh, I think that, I think it's so important that people get a gist of what's been happening. And it sounds like, you know, I could so relate to part of your story, because I too was, looking for validation for something outside of myself for so long. And in fact, um, my MO was about being perfect. I thought if I could be perfect, everybody would notice, and nobody did. And it's like I totally get the idea that, and the concept that you're a high achiever, because I could so relate to that because I am as well. And I thought it would gain the attention of my father, and it didn't. And so I'm just kind of chuckling because we have such a parallel life path there, for part of it. So yeah, and that I think going on spiritual quests and exploring. I mean, you were doing what you needed to do in order to get to where you're at now. And so I think it's so important to honor and to listen to that. And you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so I spent over $100,000 on things that didn't work. I was seeking out a lot of spiritual guides and gurus, and I was buying books all the time, and I was watching videos. I attended personal development events, all of the big names, Brian Tracy, Anthony Robbins, and they are wonderful. But unfortunately, this limited mind was still holding me in a safe, well known path to really not get the breakthrough. But that took me 15 years to figure out that I actually probably need to get someone to nail down these limiting patterns that I had been running, because even though I had spent the money, I chose to do things that just created tiny little adjustments to my life, but nothing spectacular about my results. So as usual, things got worse and worse. I had the two children. So first I moved back to Europe. I started a few businesses. They kind of collapsed. And then we moved to Australia about 11 years ago. And I fell into the trap again, working hard as an immigrant. And my life started to crumble. Health, relationships. I almost lost my wife and my children when I was working 12-hour days. I had this pattern as well, working hard. I believe
Yeah.
I have to work hard because that's all I have seen in my earlier years and early years in life. And it's got to the point when I I had caused a few accidents that week almost, but my wife basically said, "Well, let's just divorce." This is how much pressure I needed to be making that decision to then dedicate, because that's what I did. I said, I will dedicate my whole life to resolving, removing my psychological problems about
Mm,
these emotions of not good enough and all of that
yeah.
lack of guidance, lack of leadership, lack of fulfillment or happiness. I said this would be the last thing I will achieve in this life. And probably that got me to someone, a mindset specialist, coming from an NLP background. And I was done in a year.
Yeah.
So it comes down to commitment, or let's say pressure. That's how diamonds are made.
That's true. It's yeah. There's a lot of pressure that happens with gemstones, especially diamonds. I mean, it's and it's interesting too that sometimes it gets to the point where you're going to lose it all, and then something flips. And I think you and I probably could agree on this. It's like sometimes when you hit your wall and you don't feel like anything's possible, that's when miracles happen. So kudos to you for, breaking through what you broke through to create something completely different and move beyond this whole survival thing to basically thriving, which is huge.
Yeah, that's what happened, and I'm so grateful for maybe for all the journey. I can share the journey now. And the first time, 5 years ago, my life started to make sense.
Mm,
Why I have gone through living in three countries, escaping from that, and doing all these crazy things now. Uh, I have this brand, the Doctor of Self, which was born out of the struggle and pain to reduce the transformation to a year or 6 months to people who are locked up in similar patterns, but definitely not in a decade or two.
Yeah.
That's
It's re-
how.
it's really interesting how sometimes you don't really realize, um, when you look at yourself now and when you're going through all these struggles and turmoils, it's like while you're going through it, you just don't understand why until you're on the other side of it. And then you could like look back and you could say, I get it why this had to happen for this and this and this. And it makes no logical sense while you're going through it. But at the end point, when you look back, you could see how everything just lined up the way it was supposed to.
Absolutely
Yeah,
connecting the dots. And I think
absolutely.
everyone deserves that. That
Yes.
place of peace with self, peace with the world, and that creates this new space of maybe a personal brand, maybe something that's you, where you are not exerting, not pushing yourself anymore the way I did. I'm just unfolding each day into sometimes creating content. And you've heard I'm traveling now for around Europe, so it'll be even difficult sometimes to be online, but to really live the dream, why you're here for, and not wait, rehearse for life.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing sometimes we forget too is that, when we are born into our family situations, a lot of the things that we take on are survival techniques to get us through our childhood. We mold ourselves so we could, even though that's not our true essence of who we are, we take that on somehow, and we kind of, it's like how you survive to get through your childhood, and then once you become a young adult, it's like then you realize this is not who I really am. And it's like rebirthing yourself to go back to what you were when you were this beautiful little soul being born, and coming back to that originality of who you are at a soul's level.
That is so insightful, Dolores. I love how you have worded it. It's almost like our life is about knowing ourselves like we had forgotten that
Yeah.
pure soul. And pretty much that's my work. I restore
Yeah.
people's energy of who they were before they lost themselves in trying to get attention, love, feeling safe to people around them who were the authorities, and they were most of the time had their own psychological problems.
Well, and then you take it a step further. It's just like when we talk about, people giving their power away, it's like, sometimes when you're a child, unconsciously you're giving your power away. That's just the way it is. And it's, and this is just another example of how we do give our power away. It's like, of course, you were programmed to think our parents are, what we learn from and stuff like that, but in essence, we are here on earth to learn and grow, and maybe this is how we need to learn and grow and have those experiences. And it's not a bad thing or a good thing, it's just what it is. And then allowing yourself to, um, to be open enough and connected enough to go there and learn the deeper work of why. And a lot of people aren't there. You are, it's just like you were so, it sounds like you were just so miserable prior to all of this that it just wasn't comfortable anymore.
Well, I hated myself. And
Yeah.
even sometimes I even hated my family because
Yeah.
all of these commitments were just pushing me toward the edge.
Right.
But now I'm really grateful to have those experiences because probably my child, where I've seen this 10-year-old reflecting me of
Yeah.
my lack of self-belief, and my mentor helped me. Now that's the other thing. If your mind has these, I call them mind viruses since the pandemic, then you are basically running with a 1985, 1975, doesn't matter how old you are, your life on an old computer, which did not get an update, an upgrade.
Yeah.
And you're
That,
wondering why you are not getting results because your brain seemed to just hang on to what worked in the past. But come on, you may have now 2, 3, 4 decades after,
yeah.
and I'm meeting people and I'm removing, I'm bringing in the antivirus, but that's where the upgrade needs to come from the outside, someone who can spot it,
True.
because the other way to change is my journey, 30 years, 20 years, and creating so much pain. You have no choice because the bridges are burning behind you, and then you basically transform yourself. But I should say, don't waste half your life or 30 years because there's so many missing opportunities to connect, to enjoy yourself, to feel love, business opportunities. This is all coming from high level of self-worth because that's where you create.
Very true. Well, and I also think too, this is interesting. Is like we've been also programmed too not to feel, and the thing is that I think you and I both could agree on this. In order to feel, you need to be in your body. Okay, when you're in your body, you're able to feel things and hear that little that those subtleties, that little voice sometimes that's within yourself. A lot of times when you're in your head or you're trapped in a time and a place at a different, it's almost like being in multiple dimensions at the same time. It's like part of you is like still locked into something that happened as a child, but it's still running the show, basically.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say what it does is, again, it's a coping mechanism. And I had this.
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
locked, and this mentor told me, he was coming from more of a spiritual realm. He said, well, you need to take the journey from your head to your heart. And I thought, this guy is talking in Chinese. What is he talking about? Everything that I was doing was done through hard work.
Yeah,
That's all I know.
yeah,
So he didn't actually have the tools. It took me another 10 years to get a mindset coach to really work out how I'm creating my shutdown. I don't want to know about this kind of state, which
yeah,
was for me is was a survival mechanism because I couldn't handle my dad's not engaging with me. I said
yeah,
probably the only thing safe if I shut myself away and don't even share who I am.
yeah. And you know what? It's so counterproductive because sharing who you are is part of their healing journey, which is kind of interesting, right? It's just, it's like, there's this thing that I've learned from somebody else. It's just like your mess is your message, and it's just like, it's true because each one of us have gone through some pretty um, horrific experiences earlier in our lives, and they've actually assisted us to where we are today. And the thing is that it's not for the you have I find there's a lot of courage and bravery that's necessary because sometimes you have to do a deep dive into finding out of who you are as a person in order to move forward. And I think that really is challenging for some people because they are not comfortable with being with themselves. And this is about learning how to have a relationship with yourself. Isn't that the truth?
Yes, I agree. And unfortunately, that feeling uncomfortable and that has a lot of normally variety of emotions behind is taking people down the path of different types of addictions.
Yes.
And for me, it was overworking myself. For some people, it's TV,
Yep.
video games, drugs, alcohol,
Yep.
cigarette.
Yeah, it's
because
all distracted. It's distracting you from being who you are.
yes, the most
Yeah.
important questions in your life, I believe, and this is where you need to spend time with who am I? What am I here for? Or if my life is as a book with white pages, then what do I really want to have in it?
Yeah. Well, Andre, thank you so much for being part of this today and sharing your story. I'm going to put a link up here on the screen so people could get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you. And, just tell us more about what you offer people.
Well, what I have is a group where I take people through transformation from that limited self, riddled with self doubt and negative thinking. Also, I have topics coming through my social channels. Easiest to find me is hashtag Doctor of Self Worth. And before, the easiest is just to have a chat with me. Uh, there is a link I can share with you if you drop me an email or engage on any one of my social accounts. Then let's chat and see whether you're actually ready for transformation. I think that's the biggest one for a lot of people, where you
Yeah.
finally confront yourself,
Yeah.
because it's a hard one for a lot of people, but that is leading you to another reality that you probably wish you would have, almost dreamland.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And do you have like a last word that you'd like to say, a last message to share with the audience?
Dolores, what I want to share, if you're listening to this, don't give up and seek help. And I'm a strange guy in the industry. Like, I don't want to take people's money who are not getting results. So I would rather give it back. So there's basically no risk with having a chat with me, even working with me, because I think and I hope this industry will be sooner or later clear with people who are getting results and people who are charging for their time. And I believe we need to tidy up this personal development industry. But if it comes back to you, then have a look. Have you been spending time and money on something that is just really not moving you forward in any way? Dare to change, dare to seek someone else, dare to seek other ways of doing things, because most and a lot of people, I'm asking them, what did you try? And they said, oh, I've tried everything. But when I ask specifics, I find that, they tried two or three things.
Yeah.
But don't
Well,
give up.
there's a lot of, I call it noise out there, and it's about learning how to discern what is the right piece for you.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I
Well,
think when you get those personal conversations, deep conversations, that's where you would have knowledge, understanding, or maybe an interpretation to, is this real?
yeah.
Or is this someone else again trying to take my money?
Yeah.
Listen
All right.
inside.
Well, thank you so much, Andre, for being here. I appreciate your time and your information. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And once again, if you would like to reach out to Andre, here's his information. Endre Hoffman, Doctor of Self-Worth. Andre at doctorofselfworth.com is how you get in touch with him. And once again, I want to thank the audience for coming and being on our segment this day. And I'm inviting people to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and it's at dr.doloresfazzino.com, or Healing in Ways You Never Thought Possible. And also, if you're having problems being focused and staying in the moment, I invite you to download this free meditation at drdoloresfazzino.com/free-video. It'll help you stay grounded in the present moment. And so, once again, thank you, Andre, and thank you, audience, for being part of this. And we look forward to bringing you another segment of healing in ways you never thought possible next week. Take care.